To access the Inventory section of JobMaster, click on the Inventory button on the JobMaster main menu. This takes you to a window that lists all of the inventory items that are in JobMaster. For each inventory item in the list, the item number, name, quantity on hand, and a flag indicating the inventory level are shown. Above the list of inventory items, there is a search feature that lets you search through the inventory list by either inventory item number or item name. Click in the circle corresponding with your choice, then, depending on what you selected, type either the inventory item number or item name into the yellow box, and then press the Enter key. The item which you're searching for will be selected in the list. To print a list of all of the inventory items currently in JobMaster, click on the Print List of Materials button. This will print a report of all the inventory items in JobMaster, along with the quantity on hand, the unit price, and the reorder level for each item. If you want to print a list of items that need to be reordered, click on the Print Materials to Order button. This will print a report of all the inventory items for which the quantity at hand is low and need to be reordered. JobMaster can also print barcoded labels for your inventory items that you can stick on them for easy identification. To do this, click on the Print Barcoded Labels button. This will print out a sheet with a barcode label for each item in your inventory. You can choose a barcode scanner to scan these labels and easily locate an inventory item within the Inventory section of JobMaster. If we close the report window and return back to the window listing the inventory, you can see that there is a box called Locate by Barcode in the upper right corner of the window. You can use this box to scan an inventory item and locate it in the list. Place the cursor in the box by clicking in it, scan the barcode of the item, and then press the Enter key. The item will be located in the list. Now we'll demonstrate how to create a new inventory item in JobMaster. First, click on the New button. This takes you to the window where you enter all of the information about the new inventory item. First, you should choose an item code that will uniquely identify the item in JobMaster. No other item will have this identifying code. You type the identifying code that you've chosen into the item number field. In the name or description field, you type in a short description of the item. Here, you can also select the vendor from whom you usually purchase quantities of this item. For instructions on how to input vendors into JobMaster, see the video about the vendor directory. The date field automatically fills in with today's date, although you can change it to whatever you like. In the Quantity on Hand field, enter the quantity of the item that you have on hand. In the Buy Price field, enter the amount you typically pay for 1 unit of the item. This item is automatically used when you create purchase orders which include this item, although you can change the amount if you wish. In the Sell Price field, enter the amount you typically charge each customer per unit of the item. This amount is automatically used when you include an item on a sales order. If you create a cost breakdown for this item, which we'll show you how to do in this tutorial video, the calculated cost of the total of the items in the cost breakdown is automatically entered into the Sell Price field. In the Unit field, you enter the unit in which the item is measured. In the Minimum Level field, you enter the minimum amount of quantity you can have for this item. If the amount you have on hand for this item goes below the minimum level, the item is flagged with the red letter D on the window listing the inventory items. You can enter the maximum level allowed in the Maximum Level field. In the Reorder Quantity field, enter the quantity in which you typically reorder this item. This quantity is shown when you create a purchase order for this item. Next is the Inventory Type drop-down box. There are 3 selections here: Manufactured Part, Material, and Other. If you choose Manufactured Part, that means it's an item you can manufacture and which you can sell to customers. If you choose Material, that means that the item is purely one that is included in Shop Travelers because it's needed to manufacture the item. If you choose Other, the item can be used as either a part or a material. Next, there are 2 more fields called ID Code 1 and ID Code 2. If there are other identification numbers you use to identify this item, you can enter them in these fields. In the Warehouse Location field, you can enter the location where you store this item. You can input the manufacturer of the item in the Manufacturer field. You can also enter a lengthy description of the item in the long description field. JobMaster also has a feature that lets you vary the price at which you sell an item to a customer based on how much they're purchasing. In JobMaster, this is called quantity pricing, and you enter the quantity pricing for an item in the grid at the bottom of this window. The first entry in this grid is by default by the price of a quantity of 1 or more, which is the same as you entered into the sell price field. Next, for example, we click the New Price button and then enter a quantity of 50 and a lower price, which means that if they purchase 50 or more, they get this discounted price. We can go further and enter a quantity of 100 and a still lower price, which means that if they purchase 100 or more, they get this third price. If you click on a price and then click on the Delete Price button, this removes the price from the quantity pricing scheme. Once you've finished entering all of the information for the new inventory item, click on the OK button to save the new inventory item into JobMaster. Click on the Cancel button to cancel instead. Now we're back at the window which lists all of the inventory items in JobMaster. If you want to edit an inventory item that's been entered previously, just select the item by clicking on it and then click on the Edit button. This will open up a window where you can edit any of the information for the inventory item, except for the item number and item type, which cannot be changed. While this window is very similar to the one where you enter a new inventory item, there are a few additional features here that need to be described. Next to the Date field, you'll notice that there's a checkbox called Active. If this checkbox is unchecked, that means that the item can no longer be used in the application. At the bottom of the window, there's a button called Create Master Router Traveler. If the item you're editing is a manufactured part, then clicking on this button lets you create or edit the Master Router Traveler for this item. Creating Master Router Travelers is, however, out of the scope of this video, so please watch the video about Master Router Travelers to learn how to create and edit Master Router Travelers. Just to the right of the Sell Price field, you'll notice that there's a button called Cost Breakdown. Clicking on this button takes you to the Inventory Item Cost Breakdown window. In this window, you create a complete breakdown of the price for which you're selling the item to the customer. The cost of the item breaks down into the costs of the labors involved in manufacturing the part, the costs of the materials used, any additional costs, and any markups on those costs. At the left side of the window, you'll see 3 grids. The uppermost grid is where you enter any labors that are involved in producing this item. To enter a new labor, click on the New Labor button. This will create a new blank line in the grid. From the drop-down list in the labor column, select the labor you want to add to the list. The labor rate automatically fills in to the right. See the video about entering data lists for how to enter the labors and their rates into JobMaster. You must enter the amount of hours worked for that labor as well. The rate multiplied by the hours appears in the amount column. You can enter additional labor costs into the list by using the New Labor button. If you want to delete a labor cost from the list, click on it and then click on the Delete Labor button. Below the grid with the labor costs is the grid which lists the costs of the materials and parts used in manufacturing the item. To enter a new material or part into the list, click on the New Material button. This will create a new blank line in the grid. From the drop-down list in the Materials column, select the material or part that you want to add. The cost per unit of the material or part automatically fills in to the right. You also need to enter the quantity of the part that is being used in the Quantity field. The Amount field automatically fills in with the cost of the material multiplied by the quantity. You can enter additional materials by using the New Material button. Use the Delete Material button to delete materials from the list. The bottom grid is where you enter other costs involved in the production of the part that are neither labor nor materials. To add a new cost to this list, click on the New Other button. This adds a new blank line in the list. From the drop-down list in the Other Cost column, select the cost that you want to add. Then enter the quantity in the Quantity column. Use the New Other button to add additional costs in the list, or use the Delete Other to delete costs from the list. Notice that to the right of the 3 grids we just discussed, there's a Total section. This is where the amounts in all 3 grids are totaled up and you can add a markup to each subtotal. For each markup, you can choose to either enter a particular dollar amount or a percentage. At the bottom of the total section, there's a field called Part Unit Price. This field totals all three subtotals for the labors, materials, and other costs. The price in the Part Unit Price field becomes the sell price for the item. After you've finished entering all of the information for the cost breakdown, click on the OK button to save the cost breakdown, or click on the Cancel button to cancel instead. Now we're back at the Modify Inventory Information window. If you're finished making changes to the inventory item, just click on the OK button to save your changes. You can also delete inventory items from JobMaster. To do this, click on the item to select it, and then click on the Delete button. However, in some cases, you will not be able to delete the inventory item because it's being used in the application. If this is the case, it's recommended that you edit the item and mark it inactive, as we demonstrated earlier. You can also produce another inventory item that's an exact copy of an existing inventory item. To do this, click on the item you want to copy, and then click on the Reproduce Inventory Item button. This opens up a window similar to the one at which you enter a new inventory item. However, all of the details of the item you chose to copy are filled in here. The only exception is the item number for the new inventory item. As we mentioned earlier, this must be unique and cannot be the same as the item you're copying. Once you've finished making any changes to the new inventory item, click on the OK button to enter it into JobMaster. If you've changed your mind and do not want to enter it, click on the Cancel button instead. At the bottom of the window that lists all of the inventory items, you'll see a grid called Transactions. If you click on one of the inventory items in the list, all of the transactions for that item will be shown in this grid. A transaction occurs when a quantity of an item is put into inventory, taken out of inventory, or returned to inventory as unused. For example, items are put into inventory after being purchased from a vendor. Items are taken out of inventory when they're sold to a customer or they're used in the manufacture of another item. They're returned as unused when they were supposed to have been used but were not. Let's say you've just received a quantity of some inventory item and want to add it to the quantity on hand of some item. To do this, make sure the inventory item is selected in the list by clicking on it, and then click on the Check In button. This opens up a window where you have to enter the quantity that's being added. Enter the quantity into the Check In Quantity field. For example, we'll enter the quantity 5 here, then click on the OK button. As you can see in the Transactions grid, now a check-in entry has been added, indicated that a quantity of 5 has been added for that item, and today's date is shown for the entry. The quantity on hand for that item will be increased by 5. When you receive items against a purchase order in JobMaster, check-in entries are automatically created in this grid to indicate that those items have been added into the inventory. Now, let's say a quantity of an item has been taken out of your inventory, and so you need to subtract from the quantity on hand for that item. To do this, make sure the item is selected by clicking on it, and then click on the Check Out button. This opens up a window where you can enter the quantity that's being added. Enter the quantity into the Checkout Quantity field. For example, enter the quantity 10 here. Then click on the OK button. As you can see in the Transactions grid, now a checkout entry has been added, indicating that a quantity of 10 has been added for that item, and today's date is shown for the entry. The quantity on hand for that inventory item will be decreased by 10. There are also 2 instances where this process is automated, and you do not have to manually create checkout entries. The first is when you create a sales order and specify that you want to sell an item to a customer directly out of inventory instead of manufacturing to order. When you do this, a checkout entry is automatically created for the quantity that you're selling to the customer. The other instance where inventory is automatically subtracted from inventory is when you create a shop traveler. When you create a shop traveler, you specify that certain materials and parts are needed in the manufacture of an item. When you save the shop traveler, the JobMaster program asks you whether you want to automatically deduct the items that are used in the manufacture of the item from inventory. If you choose to do this, JobMaster automatically creates checkout entries for each of the items that are used in the Shop Traveler. Now, let's say that, for example, a quantity of an item was checked out of inventory because it was supposed to be used, but whatever it was supposed to be used for was canceled. Now the items need to be put back into inventory. This is accomplished by creating a return entry in the transactions grid. To do this, first select the inventory item that you want to return a quantity for by clicking on the item. Then click on the Return button. This opens up a window where you enter the quantity of the item which you want to return. For example, enter a quantity of 15 here. Then click on the OK button. As you can see in the Transactions grid, now a return entry has been added, indicating that a quantity of 15 has been added for that item, and today's date is shown for the entry. Essentially, return entries and check-in entries have the same effect in that they add to an inventory item's quantity, except that a return entry denotes that the items are being returned were checked out to be used but were not used. Lastly, you can delete an entry from the Transactions grid. To do this, click on the entry you want to delete and then click on the Delete Transaction button. A small window will pop up asking to confirm that you want to delete the entry. Click on the Yes button to confirm that you want to delete the entry. If you delete a check-in or return entry, the quantity that's in the entry will be automatically subtracted from inventory. If you delete a checkout entry, the quantity that's in that entry will be automatically added to the inventory. Finally, if you want to exit the inventory section of JobMaster and return to the main menu, click on the Close button at the bottom right part of the window.